I am prepared to confess to Tyler on the day of my adulthood ceremony. He designed for me to end up in bed with his rival. Later, as he wished, I successfully shook his rival's heart and let him have the coveted moonlight. But when I eloped with someone else, he went crazy. Chapter 1. Tyler likes his good friend's woman. Longing, loving but not getting. In order to fulfill his wish, he adopted me when I was 16. That day, after 3 days of heavy rain in the northern suburbs, the Jones family's supplies truck almost hit the youngest child in the orphanage when it slipped. I rushed to the front of the car against all odds and pushed him away. The car stopped quickly, the door opened, and a foot landed on the water and mud-mixed ground. Clean and expensive leather shoes, completely out of place in this dilapidated and poor environment. I endured the pain and tried to stand up, but fell into the muddy water. A black umbrella timely moved above my head, blocking the heavy rain. A clear and handsome face came into view. He looked down at me from a high position, emotionlessly wiped the mud off my face with his hand. When he saw my face clearly, his deep pupils suddenly contracted, then he tugged at the corner of his lips and inexplicably smiled. I felt a tingling sensation on my scalp, and as I tried to stand up again, he gently embraced me horizontally. His voice was like a feather entering my ear. He said, "Don't move, it's not good to hurt your bones." Then, he instructed the person holding the umbrella beside him to drive us to the hospital. The air conditioning was warm, and the car was filled with a pleasant fragrance along the way. He held my hand, never loosening his grip. I stayed in the hospital for 3 full days before being discharged. On the day I returned to the orphanage, the person who held me that day was also there. Sitting on the creaky wooden bed I usually slept in. Legs crossed, naturally noble. Upon seeing me, he only said 3 sentences. "You're Amy, right?" "I'm Tyler. I know you have a younger brother who needs a kidney transplant. I can help him find a kidney source and cover all the surgery expenses. Will you be willing to be with me?" I nodded without hesitation. My dependent brother Alan is only 12 years old and suffers from chronic kidney failure. A kidney transplant is the only way to extend his life. But we are too poor. Don't talk about curing diseases. Even when he feels bitter and wants to eat a piece of candy, I have to compete with other children to grab one when kind-hearted people donate snacks to the orphanage. That's how I returned to the Jones family with the man in front of me. And my brother Alan was sent abroad by Tyler for treatment. The 2 siblings were separated by distance from then on. Chapter 2. When I turned 18, Tyler held a grand coming-of-age ceremony for me. Almost all the prominent figures in City B attended. He introduced me as the lost daughter of the Jones family, recently found, and would be cherished like a precious gem in the future. The audience applauded warmly, but someone whispered, "The second Miss Jones looks really beautiful, but why does she resemble Sally a bit?" The voice was quickly interrupted by a warning. "Shh." I curled my fingers slightly, and when Tyler went off stage to rest upstairs, I followed with my long skirt in hand. 9 o'clock in the evening. The night cast a black veil over the huge French windows. The lights on the 3rd floor were off, but with the crystal light hanging high on the ceiling, I could see Tyler standing by the railing smoking, his gaze fixed on a girl on the 1st floor. In a white dress with dark hair, very similar to my usual appearance. At that moment, she was holding the arm of a handsome young man, smiling shyly and sweetly. Tyler squinted, smoke slowly drifting from his mouth, his eyes showing a hint of loss of control. That look was not unfamiliar to me. Whenever a child from the orphanage was adopted by a kind-hearted person, the remaining children would display that kind of expression. Jealousy, envy, reluctance. I stood behind him and asked, "Why did you say I am the lost daughter of the Jones family? We clearly have no blood relation." Tyler turned around, his voice indifferent. "Does it matter? Some things can't be begged for no matter how hard you try. Does that mean I can't like you?" The words were too straightforward, even Tyler raised an eyebrow after hearing them. Yes. I like Tyler. Since 2 years ago, from the moment he said he would save my brother, I fell for him. Because of him, I no longer have to fear that my only family in this world will rot one night in a damp, dark room. I won't be harassed by the orphanage chef, I can eat my fill without competing with others, and I no longer worry about being abandoned. How can a rat in a drain not yearn for light? So, I like him wholeheartedly. I even hope to be with him forever. Tyler didn't respond, but instead handed me 2 glasses of freshly poured red wine and pushed me towards the fence. Pointing to the man he had just been looking at, he said, "His name is Gene, my best friend. Go and offer him a drink. When you come back, I will tell you my answer." I glanced at Tyler, then at the crimson liquid in my hand. Without asking too much, I went downstairs. But when I finished toasting and was ready to go back to ask Tyler for an answer, things in front of me began to blur, and in a short while, my vision turned completely black. When I woke up again, the daylight was bright. I found myself lying in a strange room. My formal dress was in disarray. And on the other side of the bed sat Gene, whom I had toasted to earlier. The buttons on his shirt were all undone, and there was a lipstick mark on his collar. Facing the scene before him, he panicked, holding his head and muttering to himself, "What's going on? How did this happen?" At that moment, a scream came from the door. It was the girl who had been holding Gene's arm earlier. Trembling, she pointed at us, angrily roaring, "What are you doing? Gene, how could you do this behind my back?" "Sally? It's not what you think, I don't know why, Gene tried to explain, but Sally had already rushed to the bed, slapped me hard, then left crying. Gene followed her out. I licked my lips, tasted blood, metallic. I looked down at the bed, trying to put my clothes back on, but couldn't manage it. Tears finally spilled from my eyes. I clenched my fingertips, creating a bloody mark in my palm. Fake. Everything was fake. Only calculations are real. Chapter 3. The scandal of Miss Jones from the Jones family and Mr. Smith from the Smith family, who had a fiancé, made headlines overnight and went viral. But soon it was suppressed by various forces. In my room, I burned the diary full of teenage secrets to ashes, then picked up scissors and cut my waist-length hair into pieces. I finally understood why Tyler liked my hair so much. Even with his busy schedule at the company, he would rush back every day to comb my hair. He wouldn't allow me to dye or perm it, and I couldn't trim it casually. Even the scent of shampoo was personally blended by him. But it was all because of Sally. I was foolish enough to try to win his favor by excelling in every task he wanted me to learn, from tea ceremonies to etiquette to calligraphy. 2 years. I thought he might have some slight difference towards me in the end. But who knew, he had raised a stand-in for his rival. The smoky smell alarmed the housekeeper, and she hurriedly called Tyler. As soon as he arrived, he snatched the scissors from my hand. The sharp tip of the blade cut my palm, causing it to bleed. Ignoring my injury, he looked angrily at the scattered hair on the floor. "Amy, don't go crazy." I sorrowfully asked, "Is this the reason you adopted me? How could Miss Jones from the Jones family and Mr. Smith from the Smith family end up in such a scandal? Why is Gene still with Sally? But why choose me?" I really couldn't understand. In terms of appearance, I'm actually worlds apart from Sally. Even if I imitate her style of dressing, we only bear a slight resemblance. Beautiful. After a moment of silence, Tyler still gave me an answer. "Your eyes are captivating enough. When I saw you at 16, I knew no man could escape your gaze. Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Unexpected circumstances. They suddenly decided to get married a week later, and I ran out of time. I completely collapsed. The love games of the wealthy. I was just the chosen bait. At that moment, the housekeeper came to report. Sally had responded online, saying she was willing to stand by Gene no matter what. The wedding date was postponed to 2 months later, but it would still take place. Tyler's face turned pale, he picked up a vase and smashed it against the wall. But it wasn't enough to vent his jealousy, so he ended up smashing everything in the room that could be smashed. I had no interest in admiring his impotent rage, turned and walked away. However, at the moment of leaving, he stopped me. In a hoarse voice, Tyler said with a tone that allowed no questioning. "Amy, in 2 months, I want them to separate, or else, you will never see Alan again in your lifetime." I angrily turned around, realizing that saving Alan was also part of his scheme against me. Given the circumstances, with Sally refusing to leave, what makes you think I can seduce Jean? You can. Tyler stared into my eyes. I've said it before, no man can escape your gaze. Amy, you are a natural seductress. Chapter 4. The next day, I agreed to become a tool for Tyler's favor. Jean came to my house to apologize. Tyler took out a whip and ordered him to kneel in the ancestral hall of the Jones family to be punished. He said Amy had suffered a lot since she was a child, growing up in an orphanage. The Jones family loved and pampered her so much, so why should she endure such humiliation on her coming-of-age day? Jean knew he was in the wrong and endured 2 lashes. Just as Tyler was about to deliver the 3rd lash, I rushed out and hugged Jean from behind. The whip Tyler wielded, mixed with personal grievances, made me almost faint from the pain. Tears flowed directly without needing to be squeezed out. "Brother, stop. It's me who drugged Jean, I'm the one who unilaterally likes him. If you want to punish someone, punish me." As soon as I finished speaking, I fainted. When I woke up again, I saw Jean standing by the bed. He asked, "What did you mean by your previous words? You drugged me?" I struggled to sit up, shaking my head, "No, but saying that would shift the blame from you." "It's okay, if brother doesn't blame you." Lowering my head, I forced a weak smile. "Jean, if you want to marry the one you love, go ahead, it doesn't matter to me." Jean pursed his lips. I read pity on his face. Soon enough, the person who drugged Jean was found. Tyler was ruthless, finding a scapegoat. The criminal confessed that he was hired by a family with a grudge against the Jones family, intentionally drugging me on my coming-of-age day to disgrace the Jones family. When Jean heard the news and came to the Jones family to find me, I was wearing a thin dress, the eyebrow razor in my hand tracing my wrist for a long time. Jean rushed over and grabbed my hand. "Amy, what are you doing?" Tears fell down my cheeks, eyes shimmering, nose slightly red. Shattered like a porcelain doll. "Jean, I thought that returning to the Jones family and finding my own relatives would be my support, that I could have happiness. But, compared to me, my brother seems to care more about the family's reputation. He wants to marry me off to Simon from the Myler Investment Bank." Simon was around older than me and had just lost his wife. How could he do this? Jean angrily hammered the wall, wiping away the tears from the corners of my eyes with a brick. "Amy, don't cry, I'll go talk to your brother." Shortly after, the sound of an argument came from the study. Tyler roared, "What else can we do? With such a big scandal, which family in the circle would be willing to marry her off? If you care so much about her, why don't you marry her?" Jean on the other end remained silent for a long time. Jean returned to me with a pale face. He apologized to me. "I'm sorry, Amy, I'm really helpless. I should be responsible for you, but I already have Sally." His answer was within my expectations. Childhood sweethearts, how could lovers like us be separated so easily? I just dimmed the light in my eyes in front of him, quietly staring at my toes. Jean guiltily held me in his arms. I'm sorry, please don't do anything foolish, it hurts me to see you like this." I let him hold me, then wet his chest with tears. "Jean, I don't blame you, it's fate. The Jones family is good, providing me with food and clothing, no longer hungry, but it lacks warmth. Until now, only you are willing to give me a hug. I am very content." Jean was born out of a one-night stand between his father and another woman. He was only brought back to the ancestral home at the age of 7. Like me, he had a tough childhood, returned to the Smith family, and faced disdain once again. So after hearing my words, he held onto my waist tightly. Chapter 5. All the elegant princess dresses in the wardrobe were cut to shreds by me. Still in front of Tyler. He frowned, "Without wearing these, you won't look like Sally." I laughed, walked barefoot to Tyler, and snatched the cigarette from his fingertips. Ever since I found out he schemed against me, all my love for him had vanished. You wealthy young masters are the most pretentious, appearing gentlemanly on the surface, claiming to like those gentle noble ladies, but actually, you can't resist a seductive woman. White dresses, pfft, so boring. Who told you these things? I threw a book at him, 7 Days of Passion, Brothers' Forced Love. Tyler frowned, "What kind of messy book is this? It doesn't hurt to broaden your knowledge a bit." At that moment, my phone rang. It was Gene. He invited me to go stargazing. Since that day, Gene had been inviting me out frequently. He already bore the title of a cheater, he couldn't bear the burden of a life lost. I waved my phone. "The result will be as you wish, but how to achieve it, you don't need to worry about." After saying that, I took a puff of the cigarette and blew the smoke in Tyler's face. Then, I placed the cigarette with lipstick marks in his mouth. Tyler's pupils shrank. He had a cleanliness obsession. But he didn't dodge. Gene and I rode motorcycles on the winding mountain road. I had just gotten my driver's license not long ago, but my skills were quite good. Speeding all the way, but I didn't let him win. Finally reached the mountaintop. Gene exclaimed, "You're such a fierce rider for a little girl." I looked into the distance and smiled, because I'm not afraid of death. At the mention of the word death, Gene quickly covered my mouth. Perhaps the incident where I used an eyebrow razor to cut my wrist that day still haunted him. "Don't mention that word again." I nodded, the warm and soft touch of my lips brushed against his slightly cool palm. Gene's fingers curled slightly, then quickly relaxed. He lightly coughed. "You won in the race, what wish do you want, just say it." After thinking for a moment, I replied, "Treat Sally well, may you both be happy." He was surprised. "You're not asking for something for yourself?" I sighed as I looked at the starry sky. This is how my life is. If the gods can really hear wishes, let them be for those who can still be happy. Gene furrowed his brow, as if he had made some kind of decision, then held my hand. "Amy, I will absolutely not let you marry someone with Simon." Gene said he wouldn't let me marry someone with Simon. But it was just that, wanting to introduce me to some wealthy families, but none could compare to the young master of the Jones family. Those people change women like they change clothes. What's the difference between marrying Uncle Simon? I sneered inwardly. On Sally's side, because Gene often secretly met with me and complained to Tyler about it. Gene always says he's very busy. In the past, he would reply to my WeChat messages and calls right away. Now, even before we're married, he's starting to brush me off. Marriage matters are so complicated, I have to do everything myself. Sally's eyes were red as she leaned her head on Tyler's shoulder. "He doesn't care about me as much as you do." Tyler patted her back. "The Smith family is about to decide on the future heir, he must be very busy, Sally, you have to understand him." "You're busy too." She pouted, "But no matter how busy you are, whenever I come to you, you always make time for me." Tyler's gaze was gentle. "There's still time, why don't you consider marrying me?" Sally stood up from his embrace all of a sudden, looking serious. "Tyler, don't say such things in the future." Seeing Tyler disappointed, Sally hugged his arm and coquettishly said, "But, even if I marry Gene in the future, we'll still be the best of friends, you'll always be the most important person in my life." "Tyler, am I the most important person in your life?" Tyler nodded. Sally happily grabbed his phone. "Let me see if I'm still your top contact." "It still is." Sally finally felt satisfied. "Promise me, this position will always be reserved for me, even if I get married, even if you get married, it can't be changed, okay?" "Okay." I was listening outside. It turns out that in Tyler's heart, Sally, who was as pure as jade and ethereal as a goddess, was just a green TB*TCH who was envious of others. Are there really any good people in this situation? I shook my head. Chapter 6. When Tyler and Sally came out, they ran into me. Sally was sharp-eyed and immediately recognized that the coat on my shoulder belonged to Jean. Her eyelashes trembled violently as she questioned. Did Jean go out with you? I didn't hesitate at all. Yes, Jean saw that I was in a bad mood, so he took me out to eat. You fox spirit, do you even deserve to wear his clothes? She lost control and rushed over to pull my clothes, not forgetting to scratch my neck a few times. You've had ill intentions towards him for a long time, right? Was it your plan to get into bed with him? How can you be so malicious at such a young age? Tyler stepped in to intervene, but he was only protecting Sally, afraid that I would harm her. Actually, I'm not weak in combat. The orphanage is a place of survival of the fittest. I've had to protect my sick little brother since I was young, often getting into fights with others just to have a full meal. So Tyler was mistaken. She's the apple of his eye. How could I touch her? I could only let her hit me. The more wildly she hit, the greater the gap between her and Jean, the sooner Tyler could win her over. And the sooner this farce could end. After Sally got tired of hitting me, she said to Tyler, I want her to kneel down and apologize to me. Without my permission, she's not allowed to get up. Tyler frowned. Sally, after all, she's my sister. So you also think I'm being unreasonable? Tyler, you just said that I'm the most important person in your life. If you can't even do this small thing, then we should never see each other again. Of course, Tyler couldn't bear the pain of not seeing Sally. So, he said to me, Amy, go kneel down and apologize to Sally. So I knelt down and apologized to Sally. This one kneel lasted the whole night. The next day at dawn, Sally finally emerged from Tyler's room. There were bite marks on Tyler's shoulder blade left by Sally. What exactly the two of them did was unknown. But Tyler was in a pretty good mood. For so many years, he had yearned for Sally, loving her but unable to have her. Ultimately, it was due to my intervention that he tasted a bit of sweetness. After sending Sally away, he remembered to help me. I was already sore and unable to move, so he carried me into the room. You did well, Alan will get the most important medicine, he said. I remained silent. He instructed the butler to bring the medicine. After placing me on the bed, he dipped a cotton swab in disinfectant and anti-inflammatory solution, applying it to my neck. Sally was a bit harsh with her hands. Did she also cut your mouth? He asked. Not the mouth, I tugged at the corner of my mouth. Jean kissed me against the wall. Tyler's hand paused in midair, his voice lowering. Jean kissed you? Why, is it so strange? Do you think just talking to him would make him fall for me? Tyler's lips tightened. What else did you do? I thought for a moment. I drank too much, can't really remember. He pushed me down on the bed, roughly unbuttoning my clothes until he saw the bite mark on my collarbone, then he stopped. This bite mark. Deeper and more vicious than the one Sally left on him. Jean. How dare he? Tyler exclaimed. You didn't resist? I found this question amusing. Raising my numb hand, I started unbuttoning my clothes. It seemed that when I chose to enter this game, I lost all sense of shame. Tyler, are you so forgetful? Wasn't it you who arranged for Jean and me to be together the first time? Tyler choked up, then quickly said. But nothing happened between you then. Wow, you were monitoring us in real time, that's quite intense. I mocked, then struggled to get up and prepared to return to my room. Tyler grabbed my arm and said, he's not allowed to touch you again. Then are you still going to be with Sally? I retorted. Tyler fell silent. So, what are you pretending for? I pulled my arm away from his grip and went back to my room without looking back. I didn't expect Jean to come find me either. Last night, he was the one who introduced me to a blind date. The news of me being mistreated by the Jones family had already spread in the circle, so the gentleman who came to meet me was not very polite either. After a few drinks, he started getting dishonest. The Jones family really produces beauties. Although your reputation in the circle is already ruined, I really like your style. I remained calm on the surface, but my hand under the table was already reaching for my phone for help. The first person I called was Tyler. Tyler didn't answer. Actually, I shouldn't have had any hope for him. Sally rarely takes the initiative to find him, so how could he have the mind to deal with me? Just as I was about to call the police, Jean rushed in. At that time, I was already pinned down on the sofa by that man, my skirt lifted up to my thighs. Jean directly grabbed the man's collar, then gave him a hard punch. The man spat out some blood and cursed, "Jean, are you crazy? You introduced her to me, and now you're hitting me?" Yes. I also think Jean is crazy. He clearly wanted to find someone to take my place, so he wouldn't feel guilty. But in the end, he changed his mind. Jean took off his jacket and wrapped me in it. We left the private room. Suddenly, he hugged me. "I'm sorry, Amy. I was selfish. I was afraid you would affect my stable future, so I hurried to introduce you to someone. But when you really went on a date, I suddenly felt anxious. Amy, I don't want to push you to anyone else anymore. I think I might have fallen for you. Do you like me?" "Of course not. Idiot." Chapter 7. Just having Jean's promise is far from enough. If he can change his feelings for his childhood sweetheart, how could he ever love me forever? Compared to Sally, I'm just slightly prettier and more interesting. To completely separate them, there is still a difficult journey ahead. Coincidentally, on the night I returned, Sally made me kneel as punishment for the whole night. Look. A perfect opportunity, it has arrived. Jean quickly learned about this matter, comforted Sally on one side, then turned to find me. When he saw the scratches on my neck, he gently touched my head with a heartache. Having spoiled Sally too much. "Amy, does it hurt?" I shook my head, "It doesn't hurt anymore." After hearing that, he smiled too. Then he leaned in to blow on my neck, then kissed it. This scene happened to be seen by Tyler, who came to bring me the medicine. I saw his eyes darken. After Jean left, Tyler came in to apply medicine for me. He wasn't gentle at all, rubbing my neck with a cotton swab as if trying to rub off a layer of skin. It wasn't until I cried out in pain that he stopped. "Moving on to Jean so quickly, huh?" he said in a weird tone. I didn't know what he was insinuating, so I smiled and replied. "Just following the good teachings of my big brother." He got so angry that he threw the cotton swab in his hand and stormed out. Nuts. After that, Jean would often secretly take me out to play. We went bungee jumping, street racing, mountain climbing, and did everything Sally wouldn't or didn't want to do with him. He liked my novelty and charm, enjoying my youthful allure. Slowly but surely, he fell deeper and deeper into it, unable to extricate himself. One day, he invited me to go camping on the mountaintop. There was only one tent, and we were going to spend the night on the mountain. I wasn't a child, and I knew what that meant. So, I agreed to go. I thought things were about to enter the next phase, and I might soon see Alan. When Jean and I reached the mountaintop, it was close to evening. There were only a few red clouds left in the western sky. It was beautiful. It had been a long time since I had seen such a view. Jean grilled meat for me using a small stove, brewed milk tea, and let me sit there and eat on my own, while he set up the tent. By the time the sky was completely dark, the tent was set up. Jean, tired, sat across the table, drinking water from a cup I had used. At that moment, his phone rang. It was Sally calling. Despite having confessed to me not long ago, Jean was still in a tricky situation, torn between his childhood sweetheart and the excitement I brought. Men. Who wouldn't want to have both red roses and white roses in their hands? Of course, I wouldn't pressure him to make a decision. I just quietly ate my snacks. I didn't really care anyway. Fortunately, Jean quickly hung up the phone and turned off his phone. Right. Today is my day to sleep, so he should at least give me that dignity. I took a picture of the night view from the mountaintop and posted it on my social media. Soon enough, I received a message from Tyler. "Where are you? The butler said you're not at home." I replied, brother, I'm already an adult, why are you still monitoring me? Tyler hated it when I called him brother. Because I only did so when I wanted to tease him. Go home. Did you forget the curfew I set for you at 9 o'clock? I didn't forget, but I have an important mission today. What mission? I turned around, lowered my voice, and told him slowly, word by word. To sleep with your love rival. After saying this, Tyler's phone started ringing. I just turned it off. The photos on my social media only showed the scenery without location tags. Tyler, you better find me properly. No matter how beautiful the scenery is, it gets boring after a while. Jean said to me, it's getting cold, let's go back to the tent. Exactly, that's the main topic for today. I turned to look at the lights suddenly lit up below the mountain, a smile playing on my lips. Sure. Jean and I entered the tent at the same time. The space was cramped, just the two of us, and the ambiguous atmosphere began to heat up. Jean's hand touched my face, his Adam's apple bobbed slightly, and he asked. Amy, I want you, is that okay? I nodded. Just as he was about to press me down and kiss me, the tent was forcefully lifted up. More than 10 bodyguards surrounded us. Tyler angrily kicked Jean aside, then grabbed me like a little chicken. Through gritted teeth, he said, Amy, go home. I deliberately showed a tearful expression towards Jean. Jean's face turned dark. This duck only teased him and then flew away. Of course, I never intended to sleep with Jean from the beginning. How does that song lyric go again? What you can't have is forever tempting. Chapter 8. Tyler's clothes were covered in mud. The mountain was foggy at night, the lead car got stuck in a mud pit, and the cars behind it ended up rear-ending each other. He actually climbed up to find me. When we were descending the mountain, the rescue car hadn't arrived yet. He held my wrist with one hand and led me towards the turning point below. I ended up spraining my foot. I pouted, brother, my foot hurts. Tyler lowered his head and squatted down to carry me on his back. The bodyguard beside us was trying to be helpful. Sir, it's dark and slippery, let me do it. Tyler glared at him, get lost. After carrying me for a while, when the car arrived, we drove back home. Once we got back, he roughly threw me onto the couch. Through gritted teeth, he said, Amy, is this how you seduce Jean? And how should I seduce him? Should I watch the snow and moon with him, discuss poetry and philosophy of life? Big brother, if I tried to seduce you like that, would you fall for it? Tyler was speechless with anger. You are not allowed to see Jean again. Why? Just don't see him. But Sally and Jean's wedding is coming up soon. If you don't act fast, you might miss your chance. Tyler fell silent. He still couldn't let go. It's fine, although I didn't do anything with Jean, I deliberately left something good for you. I took out my phone, opened the album, and then tossed the phone into Tyler's hands. He took a look, and his entire face darkened. It was a series of photos of Jean and me hugging and kissing. More than 10 pictures, from various angles. Send them to Sally. Tonight won't be a waste of my time either. I sweetly smiled at him, big brother, am I amazing or what? But Tyler, as if provoked, rushed over, pinched my neck, and forcefully kissed me. It seemed not enough, he even bit down on my lip with his teeth. Blood oozed out. At that moment, a scream came from the door. It was Sally, coming to find me and demand answers. She covered her mouth, her voice muffled through her fingers. Tyler, what are you doing, with your sister? Before she could finish her sentence, she ran out with red eyes. Tyler just looked away and then squatted down to apply ointment to my swollen ankle. Aren't you going after her? He grunted, no point. He said, no point? Quite strange. Rumors started circulating in the circle about the unclear relationship between Tyler and me. A wealthy family, siblings, taboo. Listening to this is both secretive and exciting. So, Jean and Sally quickly made up again. Both of them are young masters from wealthy families. Marriage is a bond that connects the two families. It's not something that can be easily severed. Their wedding date is approaching. I even saw their wedding photos on social media. Both of them were smiling, but for some reason, it looked more sorrowful than crying. Meanwhile, Tyler kept me under house arrest, forbidding me from getting involved in Jean and Sally's affairs. I asked, "What, don't you want Sally anymore?" Tyler remained silent. Just when I thought he wouldn't answer, he said, "Amy, on the day of the coming-of-age ceremony, you said you liked me and wanted an answer. Do you still want to know that answer now?" I chuckled. Of course, I didn't want to know. Who would love someone who willingly puts themselves in another man's bed? Tyler closed his eyes and continued, "When I found out you and Jean spent the night on the mountaintop, I was almost driven mad. I thought, if Jean really dared to touch you, I would kill him. Amy, I found myself feeling jealous because of you." He seemed to find it unbelievable too. He had loved Sally for so many years, to the point where it became ingrained in his bones, a habit. Yet, another person managed to stir his heartstrings. Tortured by her, obsessed with her. I will make sure Alan receives the best treatment. Will you stay by my side in the future and love me like before, okay? He asked me if it was okay. Of course, it wasn't okay. If I don't agree, will you just ignore Alan? He fell silent. I knew it. That's Tyler's way. Despicable and shameless. I hate him. But I said, "Okay, I agree with you." The day of Jean and Sally's wedding arrived quickly. I lay by the window, watching the birds fly outside. Suddenly, I remembered the days with Alan at the orphanage. His situation was already very bad back then. The little bully in the orphanage said, "Alan, just die already. When he's gone, his chicken legs will be mine to eat." The orphanage was also struggling to survive at that time. Chicken legs were a rare treat, only available once a month, sometimes once every 2 months. So, after hearing that, I went crazy, picked up a stone from the ground, and smashed it towards him, then wrestled with him. Of course, I couldn't win, but I wasn't afraid of death. No matter how many times I was beaten to the ground, I could stand up and continue to scratch, bite, hammer, pinch. Finally, I snatched his chicken legs. That night, there were 3 chicken legs in Alan's lunchbox. But Alan looked at me and cried, "Big sister, I don't want to eat chicken legs anymore. I miss Alan so much. I haven't seen him in a long time." At that moment, there was a knock on my window. I peeked out, and it was Jean, who was supposed to get married. "Amy, come with me." I was surprised. "What are you doing here? Aren't you getting married today?" "I'm not getting married. I've made up my mind a long time ago. I don't want to be the heir, so I don't need to please Sally anymore. Amy, I like you, and I want to be with you." Jean ran away from his wedding for me? This was beyond my expectations. "I know Tyler has locked you up. He's also attending the wedding today, but I brought people with me to take you out." Seeing me still frowning, he said, "I know where Alan is." "You know Alan?" This meant he already knew my true identity. Perhaps he also guessed that all of this was a scheme between Tyler and me. "I know everything, but I don't care." He reached out his hand towards me and smiled. "Are you coming or not? We're running out of time." I nodded and jumped out of the window. I wanted to see Alan. At least Jean's scheming wasn't as deep as Tyler's. He was easier to deal with. I didn't know where we were going, but I sat in Jean's car heading out of the city. He was still wearing his wedding suit, and there was a bouquet meant for the bride in the car. He opened the window and threw the bouquet out. It was already time for the ceremony. The groom didn't show up. The hotel was in chaos. Tyler's call came at this moment. I was considering whether to pretend to still be at home, to delay Jean a bit longer. Tyler roared on the phone, "Amy, you actually eloped with Jean? Don't you want to see Alan anymore? Come home to me." The news spread quickly. Jean beside me grabbed my phone, turned it off, and threw it out the window. Amy, don't think about anything. Tyler is not worth relying on. He loves Sally so much, how much sincerity does he have for you? When did you know he liked Sally? Jean coldly replied, I knew a long time ago, Sally knew too, but none of us exposed it. I can't afford to offend the Jones family. Sally wants to enjoy the favor of two men. These years, she has been taking resources for the White family from both the Smith and Jones families. I lowered my head. How ridiculous. Chapter 10. The road out of town was blocked. Tyler's convoy quickly forced our car to a stop. He was extremely capable. We underestimated him after all. I urgently asked Jean, quickly tell me where Alan is. At that moment, the car window was shattered with a baseball bat, the door violently opened, and Tyler pulled me out of the car. The others restrained Jean on both sides. Tyler gripped my wrist, expressionless, and told the bodyguards, hit. Upon hearing this, those people didn't care about Jean's status and immediately started beating him on the ground. No, stop. I tried to intervene but was tightly held by Tyler in his arms. The beating only stopped when Tyler raised his arm to signal them to halt. Jean's face was covered in blood. Tyler's eyes were cold. One Sally is not enough, now you want to steal Amy from me, Jean, just because I usually treat you like a brother, do you really think I wouldn't get angry? Jean struggled to stand up, chuckled sarcastically, but his gaze shifted towards me. Amy, about Alan's whereabouts. Shut up. Before he could finish, Tyler's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly pulled me away. Jean's voice continued to echo from behind. As for Alan, he died half a year ago. I froze, feeling like my whole body's blood had turned to ice. After the kidney transplant, his body violently rejected it, he died shortly after the surgery. Tyler didn't even buy him a grave. He didn't tell you, did he? I looked at Tyler in disbelief, my voice trembling, is what he said true? Tyler avoided my gaze, trying to soothe me, be good, let's go home first. Tyler, answer me. Tyler fell silent. I slapped him, tears uncontrollably streaming down. Are you even human? What was I doing half a year ago? I was attending the various courses arranged by Tyler for me. I was being trained to become Sally. To be the one he could control, the tool to help him break up his rivals and the unrequited love. But what about my Alan? In a foreign land, enduring the torture of illness, without a single relative by his side. He was so timid, so afraid of pain. In his final moments, how desperate must he have been? Would he call me sister? Would he cry out in pain? Would he hate me? But I knew nothing. Tyler kept it from me, his eyes only filled with his plans, only with his Sally. I am the most incompetent sister in the world. Thinking I could handle everything perfectly, but only causing harm to my own brother. At that moment, Sally rushed over in her wedding gown, seeing the scene, she went mad with jealousy. Ha! Amy, you deserve this, you took what belonged to me, this is your retribution. Your brother deserved to die, and so do you. Tyler snapped, shut up. You're yelling at me? Tyler, you're actually yelling at me for someone else? Sally, incredulous, ran over and hit Tyler's chest, but he pushed her aside. The sound of a woman crying echoed in my ears. I passed out directly. When I woke up, I was already at the Jones house, Tyler holding my hand, softly saying, "How are you feeling? Is there anywhere uncomfortable?" I pulled my hand away, eyes full of anger. "Tyler, I want to see Alan." He hesitated for a moment. That afternoon, I saw Alan's urn. When we parted, he was only 12 years old, severely malnourished but tall for his age. That tall Alan had now become a small urn. How could this be? Was he not suffocating? I held the urn, eyes empty, tears dried up. I started to go without eating or drinking all day. Without Alan, I had no idea what was driving me to live. Tyler stayed by my side, feeling guilty and pained, begging me not to torment myself. "Amy, don't do this, if you want to hit or scold, go ahead, it's up to you." Please don't do this, I'm scared. I stared at him blankly, then give Alan back to me, will you? If you do, I'll forgive you. He remained silent. After that, I started running away with Alan. We ran to the sea, to the edge of a cliff. But every time, Tyler found us and brought us back. He locked me at home, took away all sharp objects. Even when I bathed, he had someone watch over me. If I didn't eat, he forced me to. If I couldn't sleep, he put calming herbs in my cup. He was full of schemes towards me but also so afraid of my death. One night, I dreamt of Alan. He was still a child, healthy and happy. He said he had lots of chicken legs and candies, more than he could eat, and he didn't need to fight with his sister or anyone else to get them. I cried and asked him, was the surgery painful? Were you scared at the end? Did you blame me for not being there to see you one last time? No. He grinned, showing his teeth. Why would I be mad at my sister? I love my sister the most. In the next life, I'll be my sister's brother again. When I woke up, my pillow was soaked. I realized why was I tormenting myself like this. I needed to live well, to outlive the villains. The next day, I took Alan out with me. Tyler tried to stop me. I just want to bury Alan. He's been out for too long, his soul won't rest. Tyler thought I had come to my senses and happily agreed, okay, you can bury him wherever you want. I'll get him the most expensive burial plot, I'll organize everything for you. Alan and I grew up in an orphanage, we had no family, no hometown, no place to reminisce about. So I chose to take Alan to the Hai Hui Pagoda in the temple. The Hai Hui Pagoda was located at the peak of Nanshan, the highest point in the city. This way, no matter where I went, as long as I looked south, I could see him. When we reached the mountain, I prepared to take Alan into the pagoda alone. Tyler, however, wouldn't allow it, fearing I might do something foolish. You want to come with me? Fine. As long as you crawl up these 999 steps, I'll agree. With that, I carried Alan's urn and started climbing. And unbelievably, Tyler knelt down behind me. Inside the pagoda, incense filled the air, the echoes of chanting lingered, and I suddenly felt an immense peace within. I clasped my hands together, kneeling on a cushion, making a wish. Alan, in the next life, be a healthy and happy child. By the time we descended the mountain, it was already late in the evening, and Tyler's legs were nearly crippled from kneeling. He pulled his pale lips and said, I heard that those who kneel on all these 999 steps can have one wish granted by the gods. I really wish I could turn back time to the day we first met. If there were no calculations between us, you would have loved me a lot, right? I chuckled. Do you talk in your sleep during the day too? Chapter 11. Jean and Sally's wedding plans fell apart completely. When he told me about it, he seemed unusually relaxed. He said that during the more than 10 years he spent at the Bai family, he had always felt oppressed because he was the child of a mistress, so the elders in the family looked down on him. Even his biological father didn't like him. He had to suppress his own personality, bow his head in front of his brother, pretend that he didn't like the daughter of a wealthy family, and befriend those who coveted his girlfriend. He tried hard to please everyone. The day we eloped together was the happiest time in my life. In fact, I knew I would be caught, but I really wanted to see Tyler and Sally's faces when they failed. After a pause, he apologized to me very seriously. I'm sorry for being selfish. But, my feelings for you are real. Amy, you are the only variable in my life. He asked me again if it was possible for me to like him. I shook my head. I had calculated him, and he had calculated me. Two villains, let's not tarnish love. After Sally was jilted, she came to see Tyler several times. The man who said he would love and protect her for a lifetime finally got fed up with her. He disappeared, deleting all contact information. Sally was born beautiful and proud. For so many years, she had effortlessly navigated between two men. But in the end, none of them caught her. I actually feel quite sorry for her. I was forced into this situation and ruined the comfortable life she should have had. Shortly after, the Bai family faced a crisis, on the brink of bankruptcy, but neither the Smiths nor the Joneses offered any help. She had to flee the country and disappeared without a trace. A year later, Tyler fell ill. At that time, I was studying at a university in another city, doing well academically, and even got a full scholarship. The luxurious life of the wealthy and powerful was ultimately not suitable for someone like me from a poor background. The housekeeper once asked me to go back and see Tyler. I refused. It was almost the end of the term, I didn't even have time to go to the library to secure a seat, let alone visit him. On New Year's Eve, my roommate told me that a very handsome man was waiting for me downstairs. After I went downstairs, I found that it was a senior brother from the same department. He invited me to go skiing at Wanlong Ski Resort tomorrow, but I refused, saying I wanted to study. After his unsuccessful invitation, he shoved a box of chocolates into my hands and ran off. After the senior brother left, I saw the person behind me. It was Tyler, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He was wearing a wool coat, still handsome as ever, just much thinner, with a pale complexion. There are quite a few younger boys here who like you. His gaze fell on my hands, his voice hoarse and slightly jealous. Why are you here? If you won't come to see me, I'll come to see you. He walked up to me, with a scent of Chinese medicine on him. Why aren't you using the money I gave you? I have no connection with the Joneses anymore, why should I use your money? He paused for a moment, then chuckled. You're really foolish, you should be spending my money, spend it as much as you want, can't you even get revenge on someone? The dormitory is closing, I'm leaving. I didn't want to argue with him, so I turned around and left. Tyler staggered in place for a moment, almost unable to stand. The housekeeper quickly rushed over to support his arm, barely holding up his body. He was really ill. Amy, come back for the new year. He called out to me from behind. His voice blended into the wind, carrying an indescribable desolation. I really miss you. I ignored him. Another year passed, and spring arrived again. A man claiming to be a lawyer found me. It turns out that Tyler passed away not long ago. During his last moments, he made a will, leaving all his assets to me. I looked at the documents in my hands. Muttering to myself, he's dead. The lawyer responded with a yes, but I couldn't quite hear what he said next. Life is so fragile. Alan is, and so is he. Mr. Jones's ashes are enshrined in the Hai Hui Tower in Nanshan. Hai Hui Tower? Ha! Even in death, he didn't forget to scheme against me. So when I go to pay my respects to Alan, I'll be able to see him. My roommate patted my shoulder from the side, what are you daydreaming about? Go to class, you're going to be late. When I snapped back to reality, the lawyer had already left. I took one last look at the south. The sun was warm, the sky clear for miles. In this game, everyone was a villain, there were no winners. I donated all my money to social welfare organizations, to help the children in the orphanage. I think, even though they don't have family by their side, their childhood should have chicken legs and candies. May there be love in the world.